Sure, thank you. I'm here. Jen Mojo with the Agency of Natural Resources. I submitted comments late yesterday afternoon. I believe they're exhibit 108 on the Act 250 database.
I'm sorry, can we pause for a second here? For some reason, my recording just stopped. So I think I need to start another recording.
Okay.
I didn't do anything, it just stopped. Maybe we had like a time limit or something. There's a time limit, so let me just, should we take a
10 minute break?
I mean, it won't take that long. All I gotta do is hit record.
Yeah, 5 minute stretch break while we get back online.
Okay, 2:37.
Oh my gosh.
I've never been to hear it. It took. 12, 1, 2, 3 hours.
Yeah. No, I have no detail. All I know is they need to be or at least one person by chair to see. It's all. At least one person. Chair. And you're the only.
This is recording again.
Aaron's expert on that.
I can't talk right now. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Very good job. I'm sorry. again. All right. Good, okay. All right, and so pick back up, with Ms. Mojo with A&R, your submittal, regarding the applicant's, criterion 1A for air, for 1 for air.
Erin, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jen Mojo with the Agency of Natural Resources. Like I said, right before the break, we submitted comments yesterday afternoon, exhibit 108 in the Act 250 file. Under criterion 1, the agency had a set of standard conditions we typically request for earth extraction projects. And let me know if you can't hear me. And these conditions are requested to ensure the project complies with the Vermont Air Pollution Control Regulations, Section 5-231, Section 4. And these conditions are related to pest control. I'm happy to read through them, if that's helpful for folks, but it typically entails maintaining, or let's see, using water or chemical treatment such as calcium chloride on unsafe traffic and parking areas to control dust. That is the same for paved areas as well as sweeping to minimize fugitive dust emissions. Covering trucks while they're under, on public roadways and loaded with materials. Operating rock drills with an effective wet or dry dust control system, enclosing crushing or dry screening operations, and also using wet dust control suppression, and applying water or calcium chloride to active storage compounds to visible dust emissions. So there's about 6 conditions there that the agency typically requests for these sorts of operations where extraction activities are occurring.
Great, thank you. So for under criterion 1 for air pollution, we have Ms. Alvin, Chris Clues, Tom Cloutier, Christopher Hendon, and Dennis Netboat. If you folks have any questions for the applicant and or A&R on their findings.
I have a question. My name is Robin Alden. I live at 1626 Laporte Road. I'm curious to know more about the silica content and our concerns, or if there are concerns because of the content involved.
I'm not an expert in the air division,
neither.
so that's a really good question. I think that is a good question to ask the commission to see if they would be willing to include it in a consent order.
Okay.
So I defer to the chair and keeping up more evidence on that piece and also defer to that.
Chris, do you have anything on that?
Peter,
Peter.
we don't have information on silica this time. We propose to use the BMPs to control dust as it stands now. If the commission is interested in more information, we'd look to your direction on that.
That wasn't something we were made aware of before.
I'm sorry, were you, sir?
Jim Eves, live in Marshall.
I'm sorry, who again?
Jim. I'm just asking a question.
About, I'm sorry, you're not actually under criterion 1 for party status?
Oh, okay.
Who's the
Well,
Market Conservation Commission member?
Oh, okay, well, you didn't introduce yourself.
Okay.
Well, so yeah, we were looking at you for maybe under 10 as a friend of the commission at this point. And that would be your status now. Do you understand what a friend of the commission is?
Your commission or my?
This would be you're already a friend of your own commission. It would be us and, you're able to provide information but not cross-examine or appeal.
Okay, I would like to just comment on a question. I have a question for Chris. Is it Chris?
Jen.
Sorry. I'm just curious, you said street sweeping. And yes, I mean, I'm familiar with street sweeping. I am a former DEC employee And my understanding is you wouldn't sweep a dirt road for a number of reasons. And so I was just curious, what, was your street sweeping implying that it would be sweeping dirt roads, or were you talking about the paved roads?
Correct, paved roads. So the street sweeping provision is applicable to paved roads.
Right, okay, so you're talking about after all of them, okay.
Okay, Ms. Allen, did you folks have questions for
Yeah, I want,
Peter or Jen?
yes, do we know what kind of rock is in the quarry? We were asking about silicon specific, but do we know what is actually there?
Peter?
We can answer that. Yeah, I think our hydrogeologist can answer that question.
The type of rock that is present at the site is known as phyllite, a metamorphic rock. Go into detail if you want, but phyllite is enough. Phyllite. So, you want more detail?
Yes, please.
All right, so the rock formation is known as the Ottaquiche Formation, according to the Vermont Geologic Survey. It's a Cambrian age rock, so about 500 million years age roughly, give or take 20 million.
You're talking my language, man.
So phyllite, and if you're used to marble, it's very different. It's a foliated sedimentary rock, so it's not massive like marble. It's to have a foliation pattern. It's fairly, somewhat more brittle. It's pretty commonly used as aggregate, not to mention stone or building stone. It does have some quartz. There's certainly silica in quartz. That's a naturally occurring mineral. It's not all earth materials. So in the quartz, and there's some silica interbeds within those foliations of phyllite. There's some silica content.
I mean, you're making the determination of the type of stone based on geologic formation or an actual rock that you test under microscope.
This is based on geologic mapping by Vermont Geologic Survey. This is the Ottaquiche Formation is what's there.
Okay, so, are we able to extract from, the phyllite and the silica conversation that it is possible that dust from this contains silica?
I think in a very general sense, and I'm not getting into best management practices to control dust. Just as an absolute general statement, dust can contain silica.
And we're gonna dampen that with water. It's not potable water that's brought in from the town of Morristown. Is that right? Or are we gonna dampen it using the water from the wells?
The plan is dust control water would be brought in from off-site, non-potable water.
And then that water then drains to the east and is initially, and then is stored in pond number 1 as it comes off of the blast area.
So, when water is applied for dust control, we find in moderation sufficient to control dust, but not to generate runoff, but to the extent there is runoff from the site, when rock extraction occurs, there are two settling ponds that would allow fines and dust to settle. It's all done in accordance with the State of Vermont multi-sector general permit for industrial stormwater runoff.
What does the bottom of that settling pond look like? Is that lined or is that clay or is it other stone?
Can you remind me?
Yeah, it's not a lined pond. It would be into the native soil, be constructed and excavated into the native soil.
So could it be, that then the dust or whatever is collected goes into those settling ponds? Over the course of 10 years, those will gather multiple generations, if you will, for lack of a better word, of dust collection and settlement. That's the intention. That those then contain a concentration of the dust of whatever was in the hillside before.
It certainly, as you said, it's the purpose of the settling pond to settle material. They do collect material and it's a routine maintenance to remove it periodically and
Oh, it is.
keep it's essential to sure that the settling pond has enough volume to keep settling.
Okay, how does that happen then? You dig it out with a digger?
So it's, like I said, man, that's a detail that can be figured out at the time.
I'm asking on behalf of Party Town, whose children play in the pond at the below grade of settling pond number 1 in particular. There's a drainage that goes right by settling pond 1, right into Mr. Town's backyard. And I was wondering if in a flood situation like we've had, if it's likely that that settling pond could be full, maybe would overflow and then put extra material that could potentially have silica dust in it in Mr. Town's backyard.
Settling ponds are designed based on good engineering practices to be able to function in storm events. And intent is that maintenance would be conducted periodically. There would be routine observations spelled out in the this management practices, stormwater pollution prevention plans been developed for this multi-sector general permit that specifies maintenance and observations to make sure that settling ponds are properly maintained.
Good, we have a great memory. Sorry. I'm wondering about, and you're just the, you're not just, that's one, but I'm trying to just understand all the different people in the room. I apologize.
I'm sorry, I did not give an introduction. I just jumped into that geology answer.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We were talking to Joanne, and I'm in my tangential vest right now. I've been awake all night and I'm super caffeinated, so I apologize. I apologize to this committee as well. We were talking about the dust in the water, and then, so I wanted to kind of use that and bridge back to potentially the water that comes off, the runoff water is gonna go into settling ponds, but it could also, couldn't it go into the wetlands? And then impact wetlands areas that aren't designed with the engineering of the settling ponds. Is that in your experience?
So just to clarify, I'm not a specialist within any department of the agency. The agency has 3 different, departments and they all issue various permits. So I'm more of a generalist and I can provide some sort of broad background, but, I ultimately defer to our permitting program. So, regarding, it sounds like your question is more directly related to stormwater and the way the stormwater would flow through the site and if it would drain through.
Is
Or
stormwater just depression water, is that stormwater?
So no, so my understanding is that the dust, there shouldn't be significant volume of dust water to generate enough runoff. In terms of what we would call stormwater runoff.
Is it right, is it correct that stormwater is specific to, during construction? That the word storm doesn't mean storm like in the sky, is that correct understanding?
So there's multiple types of stormwater permits. There's stormwater, and runoff that's generated during construction. There's a separate permitting process for that, a separate permit. And then once the park is complete, there's an operational stormwater permit. So that would be the collection systems that, collect runoff stormwater from when it rains, during, after, surfaces are paved and there's roofs and it collects all the stormwater and treats it,
And then releases it,
started.
goes back into the wetlands then?
I'm not exactly sure of the specific discharge points, so I'll defer to Peter or Mehdi, from PHP on that piece.
Yeah, I can speak to that. The rock extraction plans show a grading surface that directs water to the ponds. So they go to the ponds for settling, prior to discharge to the receiving water.
For the what water?
To the receiving water, or to the stream or the wetland, the outlet of the pond. So by passing and yeah, just a little bit more on the stormwater, there's 3 stormwater permits that cover the project. So one of them is this multi-sector permit, which is an industrial permit. This is what covers runoff from the extraction area. That permit has been issued and that's what would address that runoff from extraction. The second stormwater permit that's associated with what we call construction phase stormwater, which is installation of the infrastructure, the roadways, the lots, et cetera. That's construction phase stormwater. Permit's been issued for that. And then the last is what we call the operational phase stormwater, which is the long-term runoff from the roads, rooftops, parking lots, that kind of thing that goes into the series of stormwater practices that are throughout the park. So the technical standards for treatment of the runoff in all of those phases of the project are met through those 3 permits.
Ms. Allen, I just want to redirect you to your attention to air quality.
Okay.
Good.
So, the concern, I guess, is with, air, is that there's dust in the air and that the dust can blow, right? I mean, it blows before you get water on it. So just knowing that once a week or something, somebody's gonna come along with a water suppression system on a street sweeper might not be enough to mitigate the natural prevailing wind, which is gonna go right across the top of the quarry and right into Patrick's backyard. Or northerly up into my backyard. Or westerly and right into Dacia's backyard. So, the air is very important, obviously, because we still need it to breathe. I feel that that not knowing the quantity of silica and the type of material that is going to be particulated is really critical to the burden of proof that we need to have the production of evidence in terms of what is actually in that material. Knowing, generally speaking, from looking at a satellite map isn't really enough. I'd like to actually know. There's the Percy quarry right next door, which I've been in often, and there's the Menage quarry just up the road a little bit, which I've been in too. And to me, although I use the material, I don't have the microscopic or the geologic background. So in terms of breathing the air in my backyard, which will be between these 3 quarries, I'd like to know what my health safety risk is. I have a sculpture park. My business is for people to come to my house, enjoy the peace and walk around in the sculpture park. So if I lose my business or cause harm to somebody else or my children or my farm, I don't know what's in those rocks, and I'd like to know. Is that a study that you could do?
We'll take all this under advisement.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to criterion 3. Back to you, Peter, for any potential hydrological impacts to adjacent or existing water supplies or wells associated with blasting.
Understood. Thank you. And for this criteria, I'm going to turn it over to Mehdi Terry, our hydrogeologist, to discuss the groundwater monitoring plan that was developed and some of the measures that are being implemented to address this criteria. So I'll turn it over to Mehdi. Mehdi, you're welcome to sit here if you like, or I can just drive.
So I better give myself an introduction this time. My name is Mehdi Perry. I'm a hydrogeologist, PhD. I'm a certified groundwater professional, working this role in consulting in Vermont for 29 years. And currently my role is also Director of Water Resources for PhD Vermont. In terms of this project and blasting impacts to wells, I think we've heard a lot about what the project's rock extraction area is. I think it's important to note with respect to hydrologic impacts to wells, typically a rock quarry is excavated like a pit with vertical or near vertical or step sides to some significant depth below the ground surface. It tends to have a seepage of groundwater into the pit because the floor of the quarry is below the ground surface and below the water table. Flowing through the influence of gravity, groundwater is going to flow to the lowest point and flow into a quarry, and that can potentially lower water elevations in some surrounding area, home of depression or zone of influence around the quarry and affect fields of people's wells. A reduction in quantity of water is a possible consequence. For this MSI project, the proposed rock extraction area is not a pit or excavation below grade. Here, the cross-section exhibits would be.
Yep, and I'm sorry, I just was having a finicky PDF software moment over here, Matty, but let me get this up.
So I think it's already been explained, and as was observed during the site visit this morning, there is a rocky knoll in the portion of the site, and proposed rock extraction area essentially involved removing that rock knoll where it projects above the ambient grade. Final grading plan that was included with the permit application shows proposed contours that would be basically blending it in with the flatter ground on either side of where that long knoll currently exists. So unlike a typical rock extraction area that I would consider to be a quarry, that is the low-grade excavation, vertical walls just be pumped out and it collects water. This, removing that existing projection of rock, not likely to alter flow directions or groundwater levels. As it exists currently, it's an old ring, so land on it, it tends to shed water as rainfall and snow melt. When it's flattened in the proposed final configuration, runoff would essentially continue to find its way to the surrounding wetlands that are not being impacted by this extraction and find its way ultimately to Ryder Brook, as it does today. The treatment in the settling basins that were discussed earlier. Also regarding the potential for impacts to wells, in 2017, Vermont State Geologist's Office, part of Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, issued draft practice for monitoring plans for rock quarries and blasting projects. And so we have adhered to that practice. We did develop a blasting and groundwater monitoring plan, which has been submitted as one of the exhibits. While we've got this up, what you see in this map exhibit, did I identify this exhibit? Is this kind of number or?
This is, the title sheet is actually 50 studies, site plan, and cross sections. We submitted this this morning, knowing that we'd use it at the hearing. We submitted this morning as with a certificate of service. So we're looking at the overall site plan view of that document.
What we're seeing with the aerial photo of satellite image base, the proposed roughly 9-acre rock extraction area is the yellow blob in the middle. There are some black and white dashed lines radiating out from it. Those are just cross sections. They aren't any feature that exists or will be built. They're just showing dimensions along which we've drawn some cross section diagrams. So we can look at those next. You can also see in this map surrounding wells, the pink shading is source protection areas or wellhead protection areas, as they're also known, that exist within the region. Not counting the new wellhead protection area for this project itself, but for the Pinecrest Mobile Home Park, wellhead protection area is shown to the left and below, southwest of the extraction area. Noting that there's no overlap between that source protection area or this proposed rock extraction area. There's also a yellow outline surrounding the extraction area. It's a 2,000-foot monitoring radius. So that is the distance around the edge of the extraction area or blasting area that guidance document from the agency specifies wells should be monitored for water quality in association with this project. So we will be as I'll explain a little bit later, the questionnaires and permission forms to every landowner within that radius, so they have the opportunity to have their well tested. Part of the monitoring program that the state has specified. So we're going to the next sheet. And this is showing us along that first cross section, the map in the bottom, so you can get oriented.
Try to see
Top
that.
part of this is a cross-section diagram, as if you're looking through the earth. So the earth's surface is shown, dark line going horizontally, labeled ground surface. Where the extraction area would go, you can see the existing rock surface is labeled, it projects upwards, and then the proposed rock surface that blends in more with the sort of flat surrounding terrain to illustrate the way that this would be not creating a pit or excavation. Area wells that are on or near that cross-section line are also shown in this cross-section diagram. The brown and blue vertical lines, or the brown represents the overburden or soil that the driller reported drilling through to whatever depth they then encountered that underlying like bedrock. Blue shows where there's an open borehole in the rock. So typical drilled well, it's several hundred feet deep to get to the what I call bedrock aquifer, or commonly call an artesian aquifer, the groundwater's flowing through cracks or veins in the rock, and that's the source of water to those wells.
Is that a fracture trace analysis?
That is not.
Okay.
We did conduct a fracture trace analysis, I think, 2022, through the surrounding area of this project and surrounding areas. We did use a fracture trace analysis as part of our siting of the project's water supply wells.
That was in today.
I believe the fracture trace analysis, maybe on another map exhibit, it was in some of the documents that were filed from DEC for this groundwater source permit for the water supply well. For the made it into Act 250.
Yeah, the fracture trace analysis is not on these exhibits.
Is that something that will be available to us?
If, I guess I'd say if it's in the documents Mehdi describes, it's been available and was available as part of the source permit application and the permit to construct, I believe,
But that's not in the.
The publicly available
database.
document.
We've been looking and I've been unable to locate it.
It would be encompassed in the supporting DEC application, not in the Act 250 materials. Water source for using presumption of compliance with our source permit to address criteria 2. And so that's why those were not submitted back to 50.
Either we can sort of quickly shuttle through the other two.
Yep.
Cross sections is looking through the extraction area in different directions, and topographically you can see how the topography will be altered by shaving off that projecting knoll. Extraction area doesn't extend down to the depth of any wells because it's not actually excavating downwards.
Next.
And then that's one more that's going through Pinecrest, Middle Home Park on the left, through the magenta shaded source protection area for that water source. Showing you separation between that water system source protection area and this project's yellow extraction area. The airport off to the right.
What's the distance between those two?
It's about a quarter mile from the mobile home park well to the closest edge of the extraction area.
But do you know in feet from that magenta line to the yellow line?
Top of my head, no. Have to scale that.
Like under 500 feet?
Probably close to that number, the feet.
Mehdi, can you just clarify the standard first? What, accommodating that source protection area? And my general understanding is I'm seeing this as a source protection area that we're staying out of. We're run more detail about.
Yeah, so source protection areas are it is required by the state of Vermont water supply rule, which is the environmental protection rule administered by Department of Environmental Conservation, that for any public water source, this global home park being a public community water source, that it have a wetland protection area delineated and then a source protection plan being written to describe how to manage that source protection area to prevent contamination of the source and to identify and inventory what potential contaminant threats are within it. The state does not currently have any mandatory prohibitions on putting something like the rock blasting area in a well protection area. The will only be able to speak to the state's policy. I don't represent the state, but my understanding is source protection areas are meant as a planning tool rather than as a black and white. You can do this, you can't do that for the document. But we have nonetheless kept the extraction area completely outside of that source protection area, which has been delineated and approved by the state of Vermont previously for license. In terms of the monitoring in the blasting plan, go to that in a little bit more detail. Again, this is all per the description in the agency's guidance document. Monitoring would be conducted for substances that are associated with blasting, nitrate and nitrite, which are typically associated with the ammonium nitrate fuel type of blasting agent. Normally, when the blast happens, those substances are consumed in the blast. Blasting is not done properly, if the charges don't go off, there is a potential for nitrate and fuel oil contaminants to get to groundwater. I have not actually observed that happening in any quarry I've worked on in the state. And there are also best management practices that are stipulated for the blasting of this project to minimize the risk of contamination happening in the first place. But as another protective measure, we would be monitoring. That would start with the baseline round of monitoring before there's any blasting activity to establish existing pre-project conditions. Again, everybody within 2,000 feet who has a well pending landowner's permission. Then once blasting is active, there would be periodic repeat testing, owner permission again pending each time. 30, 60, 90 days after blast events, make sure that continues to be absence of contamination. And information would be reported to the well owners as well as to the state of Vermont to each round, regardless of whether anything is detected or not. It's a contingency plan in case something actually was detected on the standard.
Explain what that contingency plan is and how if something was indeed contaminated, what would happen and what the recourse would be for well owners.
Yeah, so the contingency plan it is spelled out in this written sampling plan, but in brief, it's going to be adaptive. Can't predict all possible scenarios and what to do, so it would involve confirmatory sampling to ensure that the laboratory data is indeed valid. It would then involve reporting to the state of Vermont and the well owner and deciding on the best course of action, which could be treatment of the water, commercially available water treatment devices that would be obviously at the expense of the permittee or owner, replacing the water source, changing operations, and blasting. It was found to be the most appropriate course of action based on what's detected, and we'll be able to determine about how it got there.
And would the applicant bear those costs?
Yes.
What about the springs? Do you support the springs in the same way as you support the wells?
Yes, any springs within the 2,000-foot radius would be considered water sources, and we do monitor springs in some of our other quarry blasting plans. And I may have used the word wells. I think the broader term water sources is really
Okay.
the appropriate term that is used in the plan and springs.
I have a question when you're finished.
Finished?
My name is Celine Nielsen. I'm a psychotherapist. I have a home office. I see kids and adults. I'm more worried about the impact of all of this on my practice. And I moved here in '76 from Appalachia to find the peace and solace of being here. And the back area where I live is very quiet and there's a pond. And Ryder Brook runs right through my whole fields into the back meadow. And I'm concerned about the contamination that might happen to the streams. Some of the kids I work with, even they like to go and wade in the water with me, or and my animals, I'm very
Ms.
concerned
Nelson,
about.
Ms. Nelson, thank you. Yeah, let's put a pin in that because we got you there under 1D and E, which we're gonna do in a few more.
It's really
It's
confusing.
actually separate from this one because we're only done with, and I should have pointed out the parties under criterion 3 are Alvin, Clues, Eisenbaum, Hendon, Jakewish, Miller, Nepfu, Owen, Rockwood, and Town.
Oh, I spoke out of turn.
Sorry?
I spoke out of turn, I suppose.
That's all right. That's all right. Hey, this is new for a lot of people. But first, I want to turn to Jen Mojo with A&R for you to chime in on the permits and approvals that went with the applicant's infrastructure here. Or its plan.
Regarding blasting.
The plan regarding hydrological impact, et cetera, on neighboring wells.
Sure, I don't have much technical detail to add to Meg's explanation. I think the important thing to note is that for those water sources within 2,000 feet of the extraction activity, it's really important that the landowners opt in to testing if they're concerned or if they have concerns or questions about their well. So the applicant needs the permission of the landowner to conduct the monitoring. So once you receive that notice in the mail, it's critical that you respond in the affirmative if you're interested in having the well monitored. So I think that's just probably the most important piece to note, in addition to the technical explanation.
I responded to that and I never heard back.
So I'll defer to the applicant. Was it for the last year or was it for?
Somebody sent, I can't remember who exactly sent me that notification last summer, but there was some information that I couldn't get about my well, and I stated that. Sent it back in, and I never heard back. I mean, we did collect all of those, and when and if a permit is issued, it's time to start doing the monitoring. We will reach out to everybody like yourself who sent something back to say that we're ready to schedule that first 3 blast baseline monitoring. Maybe come and take a sample. So we will certainly be back in touch once we are there. And I think as little or as much information as you can provide is fine. We're going to do the monitoring regardless. To the questionnaire anyone can fill out, and we'll test the water and ready to find out.
Mr. Nepco.
Go ahead. Still talking. Sorry. I just was wondering, those 3 sites where the blasting's gonna happen, future sites, they will have to blast below grade. Am I correct, to put a foundation in? I think at this point, you're not talking about the extraction area, but you're talking about. No, I'm talking about where that, that 12 or 9 acres or whatever, it was 12 acres, now it's 9. They're gonna blast that. You talked about it will not be blasted below grade, but they will have to put in 3 sites there for foundation, correctly? And they will have to blast below grade. The slab on grade or?
Yeah,
They should be slab. Right, industrial building, a slab on grade, okay, all right.
yeah, it would be standard type of foundation construction typical of any project. And I think in addition, I'd say that could be something that could be addressed under future subsequent land use permit application for an individual lot, but we wouldn't expect conventional construction practices like that to have an impact.
Just my concerns is that you talk about that it would not be going below grade, and then if there's 3 spots where they do have to blast down below that, then that creates a pocket for water to sit in, unless it's directed out somehow. So that was just my concerns. It has to be blasted lower. But does that make a line for water to seep through to contaminate maybe somebody else's well?
You really only address that at that individual permit for that particular building lot when that time comes.
Yeah, okay.
I would just say that would be a very localized type of construction that we certainly would propose to lower the entire extraction area by that foundation depth to prep the foundation. That's not proposed here.
So that actual work would be incidental to construction.
Which work?
The blasting on the actual site for getting the foundation in, that's incidental to construction. That's the blasting for getting the foundation in.
There may be blasting as part of that. I don't know. I guess that would be part of a future application as to what type of buildings proposed, what type of foundation is proposed.
I was just trying to drill down literally.
There you go.
That's so funny. The word incidental to construction versus quarry, because this is about a quarry. It's titled quarry. I have videos of the quarry at Percy's and the quarry at Menasha, which are right beside this. And those are not the kind of quarry that Mitty described as a hole in the ground. Those are something like the grade, and the mountain is removed away from the grade, and people drive on the grade and they drill down to the grade and then they crush that material on the grade. Those are called quarries. They're called gravel pits as well. Those words are used interchangeably. And what we're talking about here is a quarry that's of the same, like within an acre of the adjacent quarry. This one is, well, we were told it was going to be 12 acres, and I think Percy's is 13 or 14 acres, depending on how you calculate it. And Nosh's is a similar size. So just to really get back to the words that we're talking about, that's important to me to understand. Of course, the Percy quarry, I have videos right here if you'd like to see what they look like.
No, let's set on that. Thank you.
You're all set on that. So so the local quarries is what we're talking about, a third local quarry.
Mr. Depot.
Yeah, I have the same question as Pat about about how deep we would actually have to go, because there's this term of art, it seems to me, that like, we're not gonna go below grade. That might mean something to an engineer or an architect, and it might not mean the same thing to the average person. So if you've got to put in a foundation, and the Act 250 Commission right now is gonna say, yes, you can have this, do this project so you can put in 3 lots and somebody can build there later, then it seems to me that you are already approving that someday in the future, they will go as deep as they need to for whatever foundation they choose. And the applicant does not know what's going to be built there yet. So it's already predetermined.
Just to clarify for you, I think this is helpful for you. It is not carte blanche, blank check. They're gonna have to come right back into this room all over again for each and every one of those individual lots.
Yes,
So
but
that is what it is. It's a new process.
what we've heard so far of the process is, well, the town already decided, or the state already gave a water permit, so you don't get to talk about it. So,
Not necessarily gonna happen, that's just not relevant for us to discuss now. It's just.
but
in the
I'd
future.
like to get in there that if you are going to approve the quarry, which leads to those lots, then you are effectively approving that they will go below grade by any definition.
We'll just leave it at that.
And the fracture trace analysis, without actual access to that, we, the neighbors, cannot for ourselves see whether it will affect our wells. As you said, the water travels through the cracks and the cracks will be affected by blasting nearby. So it will affect our wells. Maybe. We can't tell without the analysis. Please share that.
Mr. Eisenbaum, under criterion 3.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm just curious. And I'll first by saying I did participate in the DHP well study part of the DRP process, including again, blasting. What's the process if, one day water's brown or there is no water? I mean, obviously I'm gonna call and say it happened, but what's the process to address that impact? so my family can continue having potable, reliable, safe water.
So if you're talking about a situation where you discover you don't have water or it's on ground, not us doing one of our periodic rounds of monitoring. But if we've been in contact or monitoring, give us a call, let us know. Again, the contingency plan would address a situation like that. We need to look into it, see if this is indeed caused by this project. So there are lots of different causes that make something like that happen. Thing from needing to replace a pump to an actual impact from a project is possible. If the cause would be diagnosed, we would do that. And what's the cause and what's the problem with a solution.
Fairly open-ended, but I guess can you give some anecdote on what it looks like in the past when this has happened and it has determined the result of blasting and like anecdotally kind of like timeline. Because when I think about the impact, I think like day to day, I obviously can't live in a home that potable, reliable, safe water for things water for. So I mean, are there generally, but in some way informed by past events, can you kind of speak to what it would look like from when I, notify that there's an incident to getting my water? The issue is determined to be caused by the blasting.
Yeah, I can give you some examples, although I not yet had an example of the blasting has caused the problem. For one quarry that I have been monitoring, since 1996, every few years we monitor. Somebody had a loss of water. To determine what was going on, we put a data logger down this person's well so we could monitor in real time the changes in water level. Came back 2 weeks later, collected the data. Looks like your pump's running all the time. Turned out there was a leak in the water line between the well and the house. Solved that person's problem. I mean, we figured out what the problem was, and our client in that case paid for the monitoring, didn't pay for the replacement of broken water line. There's been some situations similarly, people losing water and determined it's due to mechanical. And most of the time that we have to deal with this thing, something wrong with the pump and the plumbing. If it was due to the rock extraction area, obviously there'd be a different solution than replacing their pump, but we just haven't come across that yet.
You haven't encountered that yet, ever?
Can't recall that happening in a project that I've worked on.
All right, I'll take some follow-up on that.
And yeah, and for you personally, your well is a significant distance away, more than a half-mile distant. There is a pretty large ridge in between the project and your residence, where there's about a 250-foot change in elevation from the project up to the crest of the ridge and down to your home, so that you are really on the other side of what functions as a flow divide for groundwater. The groundwater on the east side of that ridge may flow towards the project, and on your side of the ridge is going to be flowing away.
So there's no blasting for the water tank sites?
Tank sites themselves,
Because those are only somewhere from 400 to 500 feet away.
and I'm speaking specifically to the extraction area, not the tank sites, but
Sorry, well, I got it.
those being much smaller, much more sort of localized blasting area than a 9-acre knoll, I think. It's being quite small, I think the risk is quite small.
Does that count as the first blast? Is that one of the three up there on that knoll? Because we get 3 blasts a
Three
year.
blasts a year, I guess that's a question for somebody else.
Not as it was intended. I think the intention is the 3 blasts a year is the rock associated with the rock extraction activity, and that any incidental blasting that would occur also as a requirement of general construction would be independent from that.
I wonder if we understood that for today.
Are the tanks planned prior to any warehouse structures going in?
Yeah, that would be, the tanks would be one of the first pieces of project infrastructure that we'd be required to start on.
But on a side note, I noticed in the plan to the 10-inch pipe, I believe, from the water tanks to the industrial park. Is PVC. I always thought that PVC couldn't be used for potable water supply.
That's not the case. There is, potable water supply acceptable PVC. C9, we refer to commonly as C900 pipe. There is, pipe that is rated for that use as well as circular.
C900?
That's one of the versions of PVC that can be used. The actual specifications would be in the water supply permit for the project, but that's a common type of project.
All right, so I think that's a good transition to wastewater and stormwater.
This is our last opportunity to ask any more blasting questions.
Essentially, yes. I mean, that's somewhat related with wastewater and stormwater, but we're wrapping up the blasting, the
Okay,
big 400 blasting.
but before we leave water supply, we have one last question that, well, it might not be our last question, but, we would have asked it under 9E, but as you know, we've been a little free falling today. We would like to, understand exactly, how much of the material that is going to be, extracted from the knoll, is going to be used on site. We're assuming that the applicant has done their due diligence because they know what they're doing in analyzing the roads and the lots, et cetera. There's been a lot of, maybe not confusion, the right word, but that information has been significantly missing from the application where it was available to the DRB at the time of the DRB hearing, and we have this as an exhibit if you want it. The applicant said that 20% of the material would be used on site. And so we would like to understand that officially in terms of either a percentage or, an amount that you've figured out so that we can fully understand the use.
What you heard in the DRB is consistent with the estimates we developed. So we approximately 20% would be by volume or, would be used on site. 80% would be available. It's subject to a few factors, of course, but eventual build out of the lots and the amount of rock that actually is able to be processed to the right sort of condition, but that's our current estimate.
Okay.
And
Well-
the balance that will be sold commercially is earmarked for the construction's cost in the application, which are $48 million. So while some will be sold, it's still part of the infrastructure, to support the infrastructure, to support the construction of the water system. And we view that as the same as the roads.
Would you say that again, please?
Sure. The estimated construction costs as reflected in the Act 250 permit is $8 million. So the excess aggregate to be sold is earmarked as partial pay down of that cost.
In other words, you're saying that the applicant will be selling an asset in order to cover the cost of their construction.
In the same fashion as they'll be using it to do the roads, yes.
Okay. I don't know that that's an argument for, it being I don't think that's a great argument for the argument that it is incidental to construction. I mean, you could easily sell a property somewhere else and cover the construction costs that way, or use savings and cover the construction costs.
Sounds
So we're gonna put a pin in that.
I think
Also, approving 3 additional building lots, which maximizes the use of the site.
I think that's part of the extraction area is part of the project in that. Part of what we also have to look at Act 250 is orderly growth. There's other criteria we haven't necessarily gotten into with under criteria 9. And one of the things that's important about this project is the idea this was in my opening remarks, but to think about the ability to develop this cohesively and comprehensively in one sort of review process and planning process. And so to do that and to make the most of the industrial zoning as the Memorial County Plan sort of promotes, it's not just the material itself, it's also the ability of that rock area to be used for the industrial use. So it's not just the rock. We're happy to use it on site because we feel it's very efficient and we can use it nearby, but it's also just being able to prepare the site for the intended use.
Right. But in order to do that with those 3 lots, it places a very large burden on the existing neighbors because they have to endure 10 years of blasting. So it is a weighing of 3 lots versus that impact on the neighborhood. And
It's a weighing of more than that.
we will be responding to this when we respond to the criteria 10 statement from the applicant. But I think at this point, it's important to note that once again, as other people have said in this room, as far as the party representation, that what we are talking about is a scale that is so large when the goals of an industrial park could be met without those 3 lots and without 10 years of blasting, simply to generate material that is not actually needed on site for construction. I understand there's a financial benefit, but it's not actually needed on site for construction. So we just want to submit that as really the summary of our major objection to this project, that many of the goals could be achieved, and that we would probably not oppose simply by the unnecessary scale of the park.
And if I could just add a couple things, Parker. Sure. First of all, there has been a suggestion at various times during the day that this is really just a commercial quarry and the rest of it is some ruse in order to conduct 10 years of quarrying. But I think what this does is it demonstrates quite emphatically that that's not the case. That in fact, this is being done to generate economic benefit that then allows the infrastructure for this project to be built. If there was no infrastructure to be built in this project and they were just doing this and then they ended up doing nothing, okay, but that's not this. The infrastructure that is contemplated for this project is very expensive. And this is one way for them to deal with it. And frankly, it's consistent with, a good old Vermont value of recycle, reuse. And here you have material on the site that is available to maximize the use of the site and also to allow for the construction of infrastructure. The other thing to keep in mind is when it comes to blasting, there's a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't aspect to it. If you minimize how much blasting can go on each year, it lasts longer. But if you shorten how long it is, that requires more blasting per year. And so here, there's been a real effort to limit the number of blasts to 3 a year in order to minimize the impact. The directional nature of what is being excavated to prepare the site has been done in a particular way to minimize the impact over time. And by taking it in sort of the incremental way that they are to minimize the impacts on the neighbors, now they're getting criticized because it takes 10 years. I mean, you could go in there and blast the crap out of that thing in a year, but that would have a completely different set of impacts on the neighbors. And the effort, the genuine effort here has been to do it over time in a thoughtful, gradual way that really does minimize as much as possible the impacts on the neighbors.
Mr. Nepko.
Yeah, I need to respond. So, Mr. Roy and earlier Mr. Mahoney have described words to the parties that are not correct. He's just said that we are saying, oh, it's just a ruse to get, no, we understand perfectly that there's a quarry and there's an industrial park, and that you, the commission, get to say yes or no to each of them. And that we are saying that the quarry isn't necessary for the industrial park. We are saying, well, my day job, I do long-term financial projections for capital projects at the University of California. And we know what incidental means. We had a housing development 2 blocks from where my office was, and it was $700 million. And after the thing got approved, they found rock ledges with serpentine rock. Uh-oh, asbestos, we have to remove this as hazardous waste. It added $9 million to the cost. It didn't put $9 million into the pocket of the developer, us. It cost us something. It was a mistake. It wasn't part of the plan. It didn't say, we have to have this in order to go forward. Incidental means incidental. It doesn't mean what they're saying. So,
Thank you.
I would appreciate if they don't put words in our mouths. That'd be great.
All right, moving on to, at the top of the order, the rest of the criterion. Criterion one, B.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a friend of the commission.
Yeah.
Are we still on criteria 3?
Now, we're just moved on to criterion one B.
Oh, we're not 3.
So are you all done with 3 or?
Yes, we are.
Well, I'd like something to share with 3, but.
Yeah, I want to comment on.
We have 3.
Well, if you have a comment but not a question, you can do that in front of the commission.
Well,
Last time you asked a question and I let you get away with it, so no more of those.
well,
Okay, we're going to the comment over here.
well, I'm one of the.
We've got you under 10, don't worry, you're gonna get your say.
I don't want to be under 10.
I don't blame you. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I was one of, I agree, I had some math I'd like to show you guys.
And so your name is?
Miller,
But I mean, this, yours.
Miller, not
Oh,
Miller.
Miller, gotcha. Okay. Okay,
I own the farm across the street from the airport. No, the airport's on my side, I'm sorry. You can see here's our farm. If you want to see it. There it is. And this is our farm, we're at the airport, and this is where the park is gonna go. Okay? And what I wanted to show you was that we kind of have a unique perspective on this because, well, we've been here, I mean, I've been here for 60 years, so I know the land pretty good. And our farm is up here, on the same level as, this is across the street, 100. And this is all sand right here. It's like sandy gravel. And we have a place, there's actually 2 places, but here's one where you can see where it's all sand. You can see the picture here. Down here, it all turns to clay. So this is all like, there's another picture here. You can see the whole farm here. There's these 2 places here where you can see that you can see what the soil is like. Because there's banks that have washed out. And see, you can see here's rotted road. And you can see, so here's rotted road. So there's these 2 places here, and this is one place to go up here. Again, where you can see that it's all sand. So where the airport is, and everything around 100 is all like sandy gravel. So what we have is, it goes for about 20 feet. And there's a little slope right here where you get down the floodplain, and it's all hard clay. So this is pretty much like this last 2 summers where this pasture has been. It's been the water table. I mean, this held water all summer. It sags. All these pastures that go, as you see, it goes all the way down to where their cattle are along the river. So I would assume, because like these fields that go down along here are all sand too. So at the most, I would probably think that the land across the road will be quite similar. Because it's the same plane. You see what I'm saying?
I think so.
Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is there's between 20 and 30 feet probably, a very sandy, gravelly, porous material that sits on top of where the floodplain is, which is all heavy, heavy clay. And so everything goes down through here, which happens on our side of the road, it probably happens on the side of the road, and it hits that heavy clay area and goes, it eventually ends up in Ryder Brook. So anything that is over here, it just kind of goes this way, because all the water goes this way. And so you take a concentration of almost, 2,000 people on septic system and all the industrial waste, it's more than likely that it's gonna go down through that soil, which is very sandy, very permeable, and it's gonna hit that hard layer where the groundwater is, and it's gonna be everywhere. That's where it's gonna end up. And which I wanted to point out is this is our spring, which is right here, above this circle, which is right down there where the sand meets the clay. It's been a wonderful spring. I mean, we've had as many as 300 head of cattle in there, and it always worked. We never ran out of water, which is amazing for spring, right? Especially not coming from down a hill, because those springs usually work better. So there's a lot of water there. So everything that gets put through this layer, which is probably 20 to 30 feet on our side of the road, which is probably the same over here, because here's Ryder Brook, gets that layer, and that's where the water is. So it goes in the wetlands, which kind of, eventually ends up in the brook, or ends up in our spring. If you'd like these, yeah. Do you like one too? Yeah. So these are the two places where it's in yellow, where you can see, if you were to come over there, there's too much snow now, but probably by next week, you would be able to see, you'd be able to look just like you're looking at that wall, and you can see exactly what the soil is. Which you can't, nobody else has that available, obviously. But we have that there, and it's been there because it's on the other side of the airport. But those two places, and you can see, if you go down 20, and this is a little bit deeper here, probably closer to 30 feet, and it's a little more gravelly. And then it just hits the groundwater.
What did you say your spring was? It goes here?
Yeah, our spring is right here.
Right there.
Yeah, right there. So, would you like another, I have some extra, anybody else want any? Spring is above this circle right here.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Would you like a copy too, sir?
Sure. Any other responses to that?
Yes, I think we could. I guess the question is, what criterion are we under with regard to this?
Well, it seemed like we weren't getting at the impact of this water supply, but more from maybe some of the other criteria, stormwater.
It almost felt like we were getting into 1B anyway,
Yeah.
but, I just,
It's actually not under, it is under that one, yeah, so.
Well, it's on both of them.
Yeah.
So what I would,
Perfect segue, thank you.
what I would offer is, if, as soon as we have a little bit of thought, if you guys would like to come over and see what that looks like, I think it would help you make your decision. And according to the weather, I think it would probably be within the next 4 or 5 days. We're supposed to have a pretty good thaw.
I'll just say, under 1B,
Yeah, so we're there now.
there's reference to wastewater, and that's why I'm responding to this under 1B. the
Yeah.
waste disposal. There is a state wastewater permit issued, which does look at soil conditions and, as appropriate for waste, for designing, permitting and operating the types of wastewater systems that are proposed at the park. And so, there is a level of field investigation design that goes into that permit that we're using as presumption of compliance under 1B. For a general description of that process, I think I defer to Jeff Swibber, who was from Grenier, who did prepare those applications, and he could probably speak to some of the just general investigation that goes into what they look at when you design these soil-based disposal systems.
That's perfect.
Hi, my name, again, it's Jeff Swibber with Grenier Engineering, worked on the team that designed the wastewater systems. And maybe the board is probably very aware of the process for wastewater design. We'll do for just a general overview. As part of wastewater design on an on-site system, you go on site and you dig test pits in the location that you construct your wastewater treatments. And you're looking for indications of bedrock and then also soil modeling that indicates the level that the seasonal groundwater occurs to. And what we did is design either in-ground systems or mound systems throughout the park to serve all of the lots near where the buildings be located. And we pumped them if we could not find adequate soils next to the buildings that we're proposing. We showed more stains on the plans and pumped the wastewater to an appropriate location. And so the project utilizes both mound systems and in-ground systems. And the part of the design is to make sure that there's adequate separation between seasonal high groundwater and the bottom of those distribution fields, so that you have 3 feet of separation, and that allows the nutrients that organically be removed through bacteria prior to reaching the groundwater and contaminating groundwater. I believe it was Mr. Miller indicated on the plan showed where his spring is, and that's located approximately 1,050 feet away from our nearest leach field. And so utilizing ANR standards, providing the required isolation distances for a spring. There's different standards depending on whether it's a drilled well with a casing or a spring. So a spring has a higher separation. So looking, assuming it's downhill of where the wastewater fields are, we need a 500-foot separation. So you need over 1,000 feet. If it was the other way, uphill, only 150 feet. So kind of in summary here, we looked at both the horizontal separations to the various wells and factors that we're looking at, and then also vertically through test pits, making sure we understood what the soils were with their clay, sands, and what's the high waters.
Can I just ask one question? Sure, yeah. How deep did you dig your test pit?
It ranged depending on whether it was an in-ground system, how far the pipe was sloping. So some of them were 6, 7, 8 feet deep. Some of them, if we didn't get the soil that we needed, we're only a couple feet, not all that, but we're done.
Yeah, so my whole point is that the whole soil changes when you get down around 20 feet on our side of the road. So I'm just saying that you go from a very permeable soil to a very hard soil that's going to shed, which is probably the reason why we have too much water. So if you've gone down, what I'm offering is the opportunity to see what it looks like 20 and 30 feet down.
Sure, and I guess we didn't go that far down, but like looking at the design parameters and what we need to make sure happens to provide adequate wastewater treatment, like we don't necessarily need to look that far down or that far away.
But if you're having like 2,000 people, which is almost the same size as a small town, concentrated on 80 acres, it would seem to me that you might want to go a little deeper.
I'll just say that the documentation of the wastewater system, basis of design, the environmental standards associated with that are all documented in the state wastewater permit documents, which Jeff was describing for his process. And
I'm just saying, if the amount of people in one place would make you think that maybe you would want to be a little more diligent. That's all I'm saying. And when you put 2,000 people on less than 80 acres.
Understood. Ms. Mojo, would you like to chime in on ANR's permanent approval for the wastewater facility?
I don't have anything to add. The comments I provided yesterday are similar to Mr. Zweiger's description of the process and the isolation distances, so nothing more to add. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Nefko, we only have Chris Clues and Mr. Miller under this criteria. So going back to here for the stormwater run through. We touched on it before, just go through the infrastructure and we jump in with Jen Mojo on that as well.
sure. And this is another one where, relying on presumption of compliance in the Rule 19 with the issued DEC operational phase stormwater permit. Generally, the system is the way the Vermont stormwater rules work is there's a number of treatment practices that can be used, also depending on the soil conditions and site conditions. And so the treatment systems out here consist generally of a bunch of localized either infiltration basins or gravel wetlands to provide management of operational phase stormwater runoff. And so, again, soil-based systems in a sense to manage that runoff.
And all set with A and R, obviously.
Oh,
I'm sorry?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, great. I don't know if it's Chris Clues here. Okay,
No, his son is married to Garrett's daughter, so he felt that he couldn't participate.
all right, so now, we'll get a little more into specifics of Ryder Brook. So we're gonna come back to Ms. Alvin, Elaine Nielsen, this will be your time back at the limelight, sorry for the delay. And Patrick Town, we're looking at criterion D and E regarding FEMA mapped flood inundation hazard and mapped river corridor of Ryder Brook. So let me pop it back to Peter.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Parker, if I am entered as criteria 10, can I speak on criteria 3, criteria 10?
well, we had you as friend of the commission under criterion 10, that was the only entry or appearance you made.
Well, I apologize because if you took your entries from the sign-in sheet, I didn't know the number for the criteria until I sat
Oh,
down.
no, we had a filing from Mr. Raymond there. We had an email from Brent Raymond about your interest. That's what,
Yes, correct. Well, he made a mistake in that I also, I am a sort of an expert witness on 3.
well, you know, the ship has sailed on 3.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Can I speak on 10, on 3 when I speak on 10?
Well, you'll be offering information and that's fine, when we get to that. Yes. That'll get wrapped up in the 10. It's probably inevitable.
It's probably relevant as well because of the source protection area
Yes,
discussed in 10.
right. So again, Peter,
So I'm on 1D.
yes.
These are just brief responses. This is floodways. Rockage, well, addressing the project writ large. A&R did request that we depict the mapped FEMA floodway on our site plan, particularly where it comes closest to the water supply well and water building. And so that was added to the plan submitted to the commission, and there's no infrastructure proposed in the flood. We also have A&R confirmed that in its comments submitted
Yeah,
last night.
okay. Then 1E, that we got, that we do have Alvin Nielsen and Town. That's more for the, I guess the map river corridor of Ryder Brook or something. That's more,
There's no infrastructure proposed in the river corridor.
There is interaction with the river corridor though. I have to, say that the well pump house is, placed really close to the Red Maple Sky Bloom Swamp, which is right above the Ryder Brook. In the map, that's what I was trying to go over and see today with you. I didn't get to those wellheads today. I did go to them the other day, accessing from the vast pathway to see where those wells are located. I'd like to understand a little bit more about the water treatment system. I understand there's a lot of manganese and that's treated with, chlorine, is that right? Chlorine? Is there an expert to talk about the water treatment system and the pump station?
We could do that. I guess we're under 1E, which is like largely riparian. My understanding is that's riparian zones.
Is that the stream?
we do have streams in a 1E.
So that, I understood that was Ryder Brook, and that was a chance to talk about possible impacts to the Ryder Brook, which this pump station is right above it.
Yeah, well, and this, I think it's perfect time to go back to Jen Mojo, but I mean, you took a look at that today, and I think you do.
The agency assesses that we so in the case of Ryder Brook, the riparian areas coincide with the wetlands that are contiguous, the stream flows through the wetlands. So when we're looking at projects, we ask applicants to avoid these areas and leave them undisturbed and naturally vegetated. So our assessment in terms of the piece of the infrastructure near the Maple. Maple, Basin wetland, that's being evaluated through criterion 1E streams as well as our wetland permitting process. So within that area, our understanding is that there's no impact to the wetland or the buffer. Is that permit issued? The wetland permit is still under review.
So,
Is there a particular, is there a particular hazard with the material that's, cleaning the water and, putting that material directly into that really aggregate material, the ground, it's really, and then getting that right into that, right, the 50 feet is just it, and that's it, it's 50 feet away, and we don't care about the quality of the soil that's there under. So I'm not exactly sure how the water system operates, so I'd ask the applicant that question, and, but in terms of our Vermont wetlands rules, yes, the only area that we're looking at is the activities that are currently in that 50-foot buffer.
Ms. Nielsen, do you want to?
Well, I was just wondering if there is some cleaning and some chemicals that are used. Very possible considering the weather and the soil, that there could be runoff into the stream. My big concern is the stream runs through all my property. And I'm worried about the wildlife, I'm worried about the animals, I'm worried about flooding and flooding the last few years, right into my pond where we all use, we all swim. And my dog and I and all my friends, they live right next to the, and of course, actually, I live across the street from you, Sean. You know, I mean, we're all in neighborhoods. So I'm just really worried about contamination and the effects on wildlife, on the shoreline, on how do I know that things are not getting contaminated besides testing a well. By the way, I didn't have my well tested because my well is very old and it works very well. But the Nosh told me if they went in and tested my well, that if anything happened, it was on me to have the well fixed and for the review done. And I'm in no condition, I'm in no way could I have done that. So it doesn't, I can't have my well tested. And I only want to know, is there any way that if there are any contaminants in the stream, in any way, is there any way that we can enforce some sort of periodic testing of the waters to know that they're safe? That's my main concern. I mean, I have a lot of concerns, but I'm on water right now, and I'm going to be gliding along the water, so I'm not going to see any more fix up the water. And how much moving here in this peaceful, quiet place has been wonderful for me, and that's all.
Any spots?
No, I just point out that we don't have any impacts proposed to the Snag and Swamp 50-foot buffer zone or the 50-foot buffer zone associated with the Ryder Brook at this location. So under 1E, I think that's.
Is there baseline water quality testing so that you could know if there were impacts?
That wouldn't be a typical condition of a permit, any of the permits that we have.
Not even something involving chemicals over a 10-year period?
There's nothing that is required like that now or typically required in my experience in this type of facility.
Is that something we could ask for to make sure that our river is clean? It's like natural resources, important to test at least.
I'll part of Teresa, anything they'd like to.
Any questions?
Sure.
I can submit a request for you to test it?
Yeah, I'll part of. Okay, and the way these often do a blur and overlap, we touched on 1G wetlands pretty completely now. Peter and Jen pretty much covered. We did have a preliminarily admitted party, Douglas Owen, because we couldn't tell whether the wetlands were on this property. Mr. Owen here.
He was here.
He's not interviewing.
He's up near the water tank. That's the gentleman with the big white beard.
Oh, that's right, okay. And if that's something, we'll look again at the site map. does sound like, the wetland permit situation's under control. It's actually still pending though with ANR. Yeah. All right.
I believe he was mostly going to ask for, to come back to give testimony once the permit again.
All right, so now, oh, you know, actually, while Jen is here too, with ANR, we're gonna pop quickly to criterion 8A, apologies for the whiplash. But in case we don't finish tonight, extremely likely, we can knock off, grassland bird habitat and bats, with your findings and conclusions.
Thank you. And actually online, there's Noel Dodge, who is the district wildlife biologist. Noel, are you there? I may have to text him real quick. I think he's been
I'm here.
monitoring, but- Okay, great. Thank you, Noel. Yeah, so under, grassland birds in the pre-hearing comments the agency provided, we noted the presence of, state endangered, state threatened grassland birds, occurrence within the project area. And we've had discussions with the applicant since the pre-hearing and requested that they obtain, a taking permit from the agency. And we asked that this taking permit be issued prior to, construction activities occurring near the occurrence location. So my understanding is that the taking permit application was submitted yesterday. And within that permit process, the Endangered Species Committee will review the application and also, develop permit conditions for protection of the species and any, within that permit as well will be additional mitigation measures. Noel, anything to add to that?
Nope, that was good. Thanks, Jen.
All right.
And what about the northern long-eared bat, the federally endangered bat?
I believe that's part of it.
Yeah, so, the next species we were looking at is the northern long-eared bat. The agency during the listing process developed the northern long-eared bat guidelines, which speak to the amounts of forest clearing that are permissible without having an impact on the bat itself. So for this particular project, we have requested the applicant clear trees in phases under 1% of the forested area within a mile of the project. So to ensure that restriction followed, we've asked the applicant to provide a phasing plan that identifies the area for tree clearing and the associated timeline.
So that's where it comes into importance if we're talking about 12 acres or 8.5 acres, I think. If we're talking about 8.5 acres, I think that that's 61 square feet ish, or 1% is 61 square feet. Kind of twice the size of this room maybe.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Alvin, this is just A&R show for 8A. No other parties were
Okay.
asked to come in or were admitted.
But I can ask Noel, so 1% of the forest area within a mile radius, Noel, do you know? Sorry to put you on the spot, but do you know what 1% is approximately? I think it was between 10 and 11 acres, 10 and 12 acres, but it depends on, you place a point on a map and then you look at the mapping within a mile of that area. So it fluctuates depending on where that point is initially located. But I think our initial calculation was between 10 and 12, 11 and 12 acres is 1%.
Yep,
All right,
I can
well,
just
it's
chime in.
very small.
Since I'm here, thanks, Jen.
Sure.
You are correct. I'll just confirm. I did the calculations and 1% is about 10 acres. So if the project can keep the clearing to 10 acres or less in any calendar year, then they essentially significantly eliminate the risk to take the threatened bat.
Applicants discussed that condition with A&R and
Yeah.
will agree to abide by that condition.
Great, okay, that's underway. Now we'll jump to this very small minor criteria called traffic. Criterion 5. We have parties Alvin, Cloutier, Eisenbaum, Hendon, Jakewish, Miller, Nepu, Rockwood, Stokes, and Town. And we'll kick over to Peter to go over all things good for Criterion 5.
Okay, and I'm going to call on Jen Conley, who is our traffic expert who prepared the traffic study for the project. The traffic study's been submitted as part of the application. So, I don't, Jen, you follow me if you want something up on screen. Okay.
So I am Jen Conley from PhD. I prepared the traffic study. It is submitted, so if anyone wants to copy of it, it's for the record. Just to go over, we focus the typical steps for traffic impact study in this case and have been reviewed by V-Trans. Chris Cloud is here from V-Trans. If we have any questions to follow him up with, follow with him. We followed the definition of the study area. We met with Chris in advance and also looked at locations where we anticipated 75 or more trips to pass through an intersection. And that did result in a pretty significant study area. It extended from Bridge Street all the way down past south of the site to Golf Course Road. At those 7 locations, we collected new traffic data in fall 2023. And that's the AM commuter period and the PM commuter period, which on 100 tend to be kind of those typical rush hours, if you will. We collected that data and adjusted that data based on standards and information on Route 100 from where it is counted year long. Because what you don't want to do is count and if it's really low day, obviously, or if you do, you want to adjust that to an above average month. So we adjusted that data to an above average month, and then we also adjusted it into the future, knowing this is a project that's going to take a little while to build, and we want to know what's really happening at that time. We then took a look at what the project would generate, and given this type of an industrial park is primarily industrial uses, but there are some offices thrown in. We assumed about a 75% industrial build out and a 25% office build out. And calculated based on industry standards how many trips that would generate, and then added it to the road following existing patterns for where people currently work and how they travel from their homes to work. Once we did that, we looked at the operations of the area roadways and calculated what that impact would be in those delay increases at the different intersections. At that point, then we also took a look at what the correct configuration of the site driveway would be. Our study recommended that we add a left turn lane into the site and a right turn lane into the site. What those do is it gets that slow turning traffic out of the main traffic stream, so it would have less of an impact on you folks who are just driving by and not actually entering or exiting the site. It impacts the through traffic less to include those lanes. Now, of course, those lanes won't be needed immediately upon the first site coming into play, but through discussions with V-Trans, they have asked us if we are amenable to constructing those so that they are there and aren't contingent, not dependent on a certain level of development, so that that site driveway is built the way it needs to be built and it's done properly from the beginning. So after that, we took a look at those operations, and of course, we know some of those unsignalized intersections do operate with lengthy delays. Route 100 is a very busy road. It has about 1,400 vehicles that go by. I think 1,400. I didn't say it's 1,600 vehicles that go by it at these different side streets. So your delays while you look for a gap are difficult, and they'll get even worse with background growth through 2035 and with the proposed project. But as you know, a number of the locations we look at are signalized intersections, and those will be able to accommodate the increased traffic at those locations. I will comment, obviously, the site driveway is not going to be signalized, so folks exiting the site driveway and taking left turns will experience that same level of delay. But there are, requirements for when you can signalize any side street or driveway, and they're pretty strict standards, and V-Trans follows those, and there are certain levels that you need to meet to warrant volume levels over the course of the day. And our location and the other locations are candidates
for a traffic signal at this time.
Chris, anything you want to chime in on with that?
No, it sounds good. Jen has spoken to an agreement we had where the left turn northbound and the southbound right turn would be put in now. We talked about that because that offers two distinct advantages, we thought. Number one, Jen alluded to it. It gets the trucks off the corridor immediately, right now, even upon the first building. They're off the corridor northbound, they're off the corridor southbound, the slower moving vehicles, so the corridor can progress. Advantage number two, as most of you know or may not know, you have to get a permit to put an access along the state road. We call it a section 1111 permit. It's something they have worked with us on. By putting the driveways, both left turn and right turn lane in now, that with any luck means you can get a singular permit. More importantly, what that means is you can hopefully get the construction all done at once. The applicant has to align the driveway with the airport drive for alignment reasons that helps traffic on the stop conditions turn smoother. So they'd also agreed that the right turn lane is going to need to go in initially as well. So while you're there, while you've got grading equipment, while you've got asphalt, while you've got flaggers and other type of traffic control, why not put the left turn lane in now when all that's there, so it's a one and done, and you're not getting all of that out there at the initial part, and then you get all that out there again, possibly 3 or 4 years later. If we get that done once on that single permit, that would be most advantageous.
And that's the approach the project is proposing to take.
Yeah.
Put both turn lanes in now to be most efficient construction. I just had one very granular clarification. It was noted in the pre-hearing recess order that there was some confusion about truck trips on the weekends. And I did want to note, there are no proposed rock hauling or truck trips from the extraction area on the weekend. That's per our local permit. So I just wanted to clarify that in response to that question.
All right, helpful, thank you.
I have two questions. I think that they're
Yeah.
not very long in the asking.
Excellent. No, but it's your turn. Go ahead.
Could you explain what the triggers are that would, need to be, or hurdles before a signal light is, initiated?
Sure, I mean, it varies, there are a number of different warrants, for example, closer to the school or the location where you have heavy pedestrians. If there are warrants for those reasons, but it's like this, that's isolated, has never a lot of pedestrians, not near a school, not close enough to another intersection. It really has to do with needing to sustain levels of traffic, both on the main street, which wouldn't be a problem here because the main street's really high, as well as on the side streets. And what we end up finding at a facility like an industrial park, it isn't going to be sustained for enough hours over the whole course of the day. It's basically, you don't want to inconvenience the 1,400 or 1,600 people out on the 100 to let dribs and drabs of traffic out. You don't want to stop that heavy volume just to let 100 people out. When it's sustained, and I think the criteria for this road might be 150. If it's 150 vehicles on the side street for 8 hours, then there's a reason to stop the other traffic to let the side street out. So it's really weighing everyone's needs. The evaluation is really based on not just I have a lot of delay. It's if I get a green light and they get a red light, how much more delay do they have? And where they, on the 100, the volume is so much higher, it doesn't make sense because our side street volume isn't high enough.
Are the accidents factored into that calculation? If you have multiple accidents and not 150?
Yeah, the criteria for crashes though is quite high, and luckily here in Vermont, we don't tend to reach that level. I believe it's 5 or more correctable accidents a year. And that is a really high criteria. I think maybe, there are some urban places more in Chittenden County that may hit that level, but here we don't hit 5 crashes, we hit about 2 crashes a year. At our highest intersection, which might be Bridge, if I remember correctly.
You might have that in my front yard. I'm not on your.
Would you speak to that, please? So what is your definition of correctionable accident? Because that could be a confusing point.
Well, it would be a confusing point, but in this case, we don't have even that many crashes at all, whether they're correctable or not.
But the idea of correctable is that putting in a traffic signal to stop the through traffic and let the side street traffic say pull out safer. Would that make those crashes go away? Like, are there a lot of T-bones, for example, or that sort of thing? Other crashes, like he just said, people who run off the road into his yard, those are a lane departure, which is not really related to putting in a traffic signal. So those would not likely be correctable by a signal. They could be correctable other ways, but a signal wouldn't specifically correct that type of crash. Thank you.
So Neville.
Yeah, I actually have some documents to hand you. I really appreciate the witnesses' clarity and I just want to make sure I'm giving you the right copy. Color and specificity on everything. It makes it really easy to understand what standards are. However, so one of the things that's you, and wait, did I give you all 4 copies? Yeah, I'm sorry. One's you. Perfect. So the question that I end up having. This is what I need to give.
Dennis, can I ask a different question while you organize?
Oh, I'm not.
You got it.
Sorry. I needed to give you this. So, the analysis from V-Trans stated that it was based on a particular industrial park level and office level from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And so I found on their website a report prepared by them talking about high cube warehouses like Amazon warehouses, UPS warehouses, any type of transshipping thing that might be located near an airport, which found that they tend to have much higher impact on traffic, 8 to 10 extra trips per 1,000 square feet, not 5. So when your report said 1,700 per day, 230 in the peak hours, 230 an hour is 4 cars a minute, 1 car every 15 seconds, in addition to whatever's there now. It's a doubling of the traffic. If I understood, you said there were about 1,600 now. It's going to be an additional 1,700 with this part.
1,600 in an hour versus.
Oh, okay.
1,700 per day.
Okay, so that leads to the second part. So there would be, that was based on a standard that came out to about 5 extra trips per 1,000 square feet, if I understood the calculation correctly. The document that I gave to Chris Roy and to the commission, this shows the MSI site, and you can see the MSI building. It's 180,000 plus square feet. It's on less than 2 acres. They have a 12-acre site, and they've crammed their whole 180,000 square feet into that corner. They're using 2 acres. This is 89 acres. They claim in their application that there will be 335,000 square feet of industrial uses. But if you divide this by 2 acres and come up with, let's say, divided by 4 acres, 2 times 180,000, you get 3.6 million square feet, not 335,000. So there would be 10 times the number of people that they claim. They're getting the thing approved to 1,800 people. But they're building a space that can take 20,000. Not that they're gonna be people wanting to move here that quickly, but that's what they're really doing, because they currently have a site right up the road where they've got 180,000 square feet, 300 people in a single building. So do you believe when they say, oh, it'll only be 1,800 people? I don't. So when I look at the ITE study that says you should expect not the 5, but 8 to 10 and then we should expect 10 times as many people as they're claiming. That's a somewhat different traffic impact. It's 10 times what they're claiming. If these, if you can compare what MSI built here to what MSI is talking about building there, it's the same people building it. Are they going to do something different?
Any response to that?
Thank you for your patience with like Mr. Roy and Claire Saki, sure you, understand the broad swath of personalities and characters that come to the ice. One of my friends, is a man named Dave Whitcomb, who used to run Stowe Aviation at Stowe Airport. And Dave, actually looks remarkably like Mr. Schneier. I was actually thinking. Dave, I asked him how many parking spots are at the airport. And he said there are.
I'm gonna object. Well,
This is
well, let me state my objection and then the chair gets to this.
Okay.
Go ahead. I mean, you have a witness. The witness is supposed to talk about their particularized interest and information that they can provide. And what we have is somebody providing information given to them by somebody who's not here. And
I can give you information without that. This is a picture that you guys provided of the airport parking lot. This parking lot is something that you can visit. Anecdotally, it holds 50 people.
all right. I'll give you style points.
So this parking lot holds 50 people. It's a park and ride. And I wanted to point out the relative scale of the proposed parking area for the industrial park and compare that to the water use, which can give us the amount of people in each building because the water permit delineated how many people are in each lot. So we can make some assumptions based on what they told us. For example, lot 22, which is this guy right here. I think it's on 1.4 acres, plus minus. Is that right? About 1.4?
It's on the plan.
Yeah, okay. So in this building, they're proposing 133 employees when it's fully built out. And because it's the way that my brain works to build models, I spent way too much time building models. This is to scale the size of the individual cars. So this represents 20 cars. In the amount of area that they've allowed for the parking lot, this is an exact copy, a tracing actually of their parking lot. This is 133 cars at scale. And we don't park like this. We don't park front to back. That's how they come out of the factory. In the bylaws in Morrisville have a certain amount of space for each car, backing and turning, driveways, walking ways, handicap parking, the EV parking. There's a lot around parking that we know. We know we don't park like this. So this is obviously too small an area, given how we actually park. And the area that's actually allowed for parking is substantially too small for 133 employees in that parking lot. So that asks the question then, are these jobs, which we don't know what these jobs are, maybe they're shift jobs. So then is that new traffic that's going to go around the clock? In trying to understand and grapple with the whole idea, as it directly relates to me, traffic goes by my house. I have a sculpture park, like I've been saying, a street sweeper crashed into my sculpture park doing 65 miles an hour and destroyed a $300,000 sculpture in my front yard. So having extra vehicles come through there is incredibly scary, dangerous, and turns out loud. it says a diesel truck on the chart that VHB provided, 90 decibels. So we're talking about moving 47-ish acres, I think, of topsoil out. We're moving 35 to 50,000 cubic yards of gravel out. Probably most of it will go south because it'll go through Stowe to get to Chittenden County. You get it? So the noise and the volume of traffic is actually incredible. And I was wondering, in the traffic study, we looked at those 230 extra trips per hour peak hour. I think maybe Chris said there's 47 that come through the West Hill intersection on Route 100 in the peak hour. Does that account for the diesel trucks and the heavy trucks? And like I said, we don't know what these are gonna be, but suppose they get in goods and then they use those goods to build stuff and then they finish them and then they ship those goods out. That's other trips. Are those trips in the general matrix of the calculation?
You want to take Chris?
Go ahead.
Yes, so all of the trips, so the way ITE develops its trip rates is by doing counts at industrial parks. So that includes every trip, whether it's a FedEx delivery, whether it's a truck coming in with goods, whether it's a truck going out with goods, whether it's an employee trip. It basically takes the total square footage of an industrial park and comes up with the trip rate, including all of those trips.
Do those trips include the quarry for 10 years? Boats, like, can you put that volume into that and tell us then how many trips?
Yeah, no, I definitely can, because the quarry is limited to, I believe it's gonna be 20 trips associated, 30 trips associated with the quarry. When that is, ongoing, which you're right, will be for a long time, moving material. And so with those 30 trips will be occurring before the site is built out. And so I'm confident then that our estimate for the full build out also accommodate that interim condition. And again, the type of vehicles, which can be heavy, whether you're moving rock, obviously, or whether you're coming and going from an industrial site. But we're anticipating a heavy truck percentage. Anecdotally, I will also share with you the truck volume or the truck percentage on Route 100 is very high for our state. It's already kind of a heavier truck corridor.
And just so I understand, the trip is out and then back. So it's like
A trip is a single direction.
okay. So that's 15 out and then 15 back if you have.
That is total 30 trucks, so it's 30 and 30 out.
Okay, so for me in my sculpture park, that's 60 diesel trucks going past my house. Or we
One day they'll all be electric, but yes, 60 truck trips going whichever direction they go, which I can't comment on where that material will be needed. Because you would hope someone like V-Trans would do this somewhere locally, or, other construction would use this somewhere.
So 60 times 90 over time, 90 decibels. Is there a metric for understanding like my sustained, maybe this is a sounds question. The sound guy, like the sustained.
I don't think is any longer with us, but it is not a cumulative increase like that. It's actually much more disruptive to you if you're sitting there in a single truck or side rather than, multiple trucks. It is not an additive thing. It's more intrusive when it's a single truck when you're in a quiet environment.
That's interesting. There is a constant all day long 90 decibels isn't dangerous.
Well, we also, the decibels of vehicles on the highways are outside the purview for the most part of Act 250. That has to do with vehicles and federal highway regulations and the like.
Is that a federal highway?
So, well, they have standards, but what the noise that's created by traffic on a public highway that those vehicles have the right to be on isn't part of the noise calculation. You can have the noise in the project and moving around in the project, but once they get on a public highway, now it's a public resource that anybody, and you'll hear cars that go down that need their muffler fixed, and there's no way to regulate that. And so once you're on a public highway, it's out of the control of the permittee because the conditions can only be enforced against the permittee.
Are we talking about year-round trips at that rate? I kind of understood that the trucking would happen year round, but the blasting and the crushing is a limited scope, is that right?
I'm gonna defer to Peter on that.
Can you restate the question? I apologize.
No, I've been busy too. Are the truck trips year round? Or is it only limited to the summertime crushing and blast? Like, does it parallel the crushing and blasting schedule? Or is it year round, you're gonna be hauling all different material?
I think we saw it as more subject to the actual, just general Vermont earthwork construction season. So that, if you're talking about, trips from the rock extraction area leaving the site.
Yeah.
That it would be more seasonal based upon other considerations, which is somewhat variable, but I mean, generally it's sort of Thanksgiving to, spring thaw and soil
Yeah.
thaw.
So we're talking about winter is kind of off. Summer is when I'm outside showing my work for people, I'm just gonna be dealing with it, and that's nothing to do with the applicant because it's on a public highway.
But if we're gonna speculate, we might say there are gonna be less trucks going past your place, because they're gonna pick it up down the road and go south with it. So you're probably experiencing used truck load in your yard.
I think that paraphrasing what, Council Roy said, but I think once it's on the public highways, or the applicant, sorry.
So what we
Yeah,
could
but just
potentially
just real-
limit,
Aaron Brondike takes precedence over everybody
Oh,
here for the hand raising. And I think I know what you're gonna
Chair,
say.
really, the town asked me to make sure that we're wrapped up by 5, because they have another town meeting starting after our meeting, and they need time to set the room up for their meeting, and we need time to clean up.
Right, fair enough.
So
Okay.
it's just a time check.
Yep.
That's all.
Can I just ask one, the 30 trips, is that per day or per year, per what is the?
The
truck
truck trips to, during, like the blasting aggregate, that's in a day.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I understand.
I'm just confused. You said that the trucks during the extraction process were counted sort of separately from the traffic using the park. Is that correct? Because the truck trip would precede the industrial traffic. So, but the park is going to be built, the blasting process is gonna go on to 10 years. So there's gonna be no traffic in the park for the first 10 years, other than the trucks?
No, it won't reach the full build out though.
Yeah, okay.
So there's like, it'll start off while that's staying steady and then. by the time we reach-
So they're not really separate.
By the time we reach the peak, I analyzed, obviously, all the material will be gone because they'll be building, it will not be piles of aggregate anywhere on the site anymore.
Right.
Mr. Nepfu,
But wait.
no, friend of the commission, like I've said 3 times now, you don't get to ask questions. You have useful information.
Ask a question.
No. Friends of the commission may offer information, they cannot ask questions or appeal. I said this before. Gotta put up some side yards there. Appreciate it. Mr. Nepfu.
I wanted to clarify a question, Theo was asking about whether something's harmful if it's sustained. And, the expert from V-Trans was saying that it's not disruptive if it's sustained. And I wanted to clarify, I think there's a difference. Theo, were you asking about could it lead to hearing loss or other types of harm?
what?
When you asked if it's harmful to have 60 trips a day at 90 decibels, you were asking about harm or disruption? Medical harm, like you're, right. So I'm gonna ask the expert, are you qualified to say that it does not cause medical harm, or are you saying the studies show that it's not disruptive because it doesn't bug you?
I am gonna say a few things. One, I'm from VHB, not from V-Trans.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay,
Sorry.
that's Chris.
Back of you.
And 2, I am not a noise expert, so I'm not commenting on just how disruptive or just how harmful it would be.
Right, so I just wanted the commission to know, we don't have any answer as to whether something's harmful yet, because we don't have anybody in the room to answer that question. We all agree that that question wasn't answered. It's not.
So at peak, how many extra vehicles are we talking?
It was 230 vehicle trips in the peak hour. And again, that goes in both directions on Route 100, so that number is split into two directions. And over the course of the day, it was 1,700.
Per hour.
It's in the highest hour of the day, 230. And that's some trips entering and most, again, the PM peak hours tend to be the highest, and at that hour, it's fewer trips entering, more trips exiting.
That would be lots of time for work.
That is just during the highest hour. So,
But most people work from 9 to 5.
not an industrial site, it can be very different. There can be, again, the office portion could have people working a regular 9 to 5. Some of the industrial stuff will be 7 to 3. There could be additional shifts, as was already mentioned.
Around the clock.
I can't predict that, but it's possible.
We're only taking part of the criteria.
If it's really quick, if it's really quick, is that okay? It's just an observation that I've made as I've been, this is my first experience with this kind of
The
thing.
new party status of the category I just made up.
Oh, awesome.
It was really quick and we're about to break.
Totally. Thank you so much.
I
I just observed that there's been a lot of people talking about this quarry. And initially, I think it was Peter referred to it as a rock extraction area. And Mr. Nephew pointed out that the town plan has made it very clear there are to be no more quarries. That's just an observation that I've made.
I'd like to just say an observation of mine. Since that study was done in the last year and a half, it's taken me longer to pull out of my driveway. So I feel like there's more traffic already been achieved in the last 18 months.
And so how long are these turn-offs?
So, yeah, so my whole point is I feel like a lot of the gain has already been made in the traffic.
Yeah. This action is very.
And I think everybody that lives right around 200 agrees with me.
Mr. Eisenbaum.
So I would
sorry.
like to have another story. I wondered if another study could be done, another traffic count.
Mr. Eisenbaum.
Thank you. I guess this is what I say, Rob, before I ask the question, I'd like to request the study to stay at first. So my understanding is typically the traffic study is going to the impact on adjoining roadways. The proposed site is about. There's one road that goes up valley to the west of the site, that's Stagecoach Road. There's one to the east, that's Randolph Road. Randolph Road is busy in tour. Stagecoach Road is anecdotally, and I'm sure other people would agree, a very common bypass. On the drive on Route 100, people that are going to points north, west, Morristown, Hyde Park, Johnson, Cambridge, et cetera, et cetera. I think people often will take Stagecoach Road and shoot off, and you can go east to Morgan, Hardwick, et cetera, just to avoid the hassle through 100. I understand typically traffic studies consider natural fact to pedestrians and cyclists. As I said previously, I'll just say again, Stagecoach Road is a known route for cyclists. The town of Stowe and its tourism board advertise Stagecoach Road as such. Stagecoach Road became so. There are 2 out-of-state tour operators that use Stagecoach Road. I see these folks. I'm not a huge fan, but I know they're there because I call them. People take the road. These are 20+ person groups that operate daily during the fall and the summer and the fall. I can also say anecdotally, we get a lot of accidents on Stagecoach Road. The EMTs have been first responder on 2 in the last 6 weeks. I've seen 2 cars go off the road in front of my house in the last few months. I've driven by 7 accidents on Stagecoach Road since the pre-hearing for this hearing, which was in December. And that's just anecdotal. I haven't looked at the crash data. I have a handful of first year. But I think there's a strong case to be made that Stagecoach Road ought to be considered and ought to be studied as part of the broader traffic study for this application. I would just ask for your reaction to that.
I don't have familiarity with it. I guess my reaction to it very tentatively is to what end? Because what we typically find is what wants to change the character of the road, what I, as a traffic engineer, could implement to mitigate or improve the road, might not be seen as an improvement to people who live on it. Now, I want it to stay either now or go speed or, you know what I mean? Traffic engineering solutions are more about the efficiency of movement in a way that typically, myself included, might not want those types of improvements on our road. So I'm not saying that it can't be studied, and there may not be some recommendations about it, but I'm saying it may not serve you if that were to be done.
I appreciate that, and I think if we zoom out from just thinking about traffic study, in the broader context of this application, we're talking about impact broader, right? So while mitigation of traffic impacts might be undesirable, I think the bigger question is, what is the impact of the traffic more broadly? Are we assuming that we're going to implement this change, provide this permit for this project, and then suffer the impacts from it? And I think it's worth considering the impact of Stagecoach Road in terms of tourism, safety. You know, I got two little kids, living on Stagecoach Road. It's a fast road. People use 40, people typically drive 60, and the number of cars that go off it, I think is evidence of that. And we have to assume that people who are not going to this new industrial park for work, people that have no other business on Route 100 during commuter hours, are going to go to Stagecoach Road. And there is an impact of that, and I think the board's decision about issuing a permit full stop should consider that in that. And whether or not a traffic study is part of that, I think it is worth considering. And I'd also just point out that, you know, it's really absent from the traffic study, and that is, you know, itself also no worries.
Okay, Mr. Nepo.
Yeah, just to answer your question to what end, but what David just said a little more briefly, to what end? The commission needs the information in order to issue a permit. If there's a blank, then they're issuing a permit without the information that they need, and that's just not how it's supposed to be. So we need the information to know what the impact is. in the first place.
I also have a concern about traffic, increased traffic on Cochrane Road, because the corner of my property almost lines up exactly with the back entrance to the industrial park. So, you know, I'm concerned also about the shift work in the industrial park and whether that will be evening and night traffic and lights and noise coming in my windows, as well as, you know, yes, great, you're gonna have left and right turn lanes, which will help, but as we said, it's already hard enough to pull out into traffic off of Cochrane Road, used car on Route 100 anywhere. So traffic will get backed up. People will take the back way, increasing the traffic onto Cochrane Road and right by my house. So, I know the town had said, well, we can make it so people, it'll only be an emergency. That is never gonna happen. It's not enforceable. If I can take a shortcut, I'm going to. If you can take a shortcut, you're going to. So just the increased traffic on Cochrane Road. I live on Brittany Lane, which is a private road, and it's unbelievable the amount of people who already turn around on my private road, using my road, damaging mine. Two people just today, did the same thing, turned around on my private road after our site visit. And as well as they were doing the well, all the big construction trucks, multiple times, backed up and turned around on my road, damaging, breaking the brand new, you know, paved road. And nobody pays for
improvements on my road, but me. Meaning, 3 neighbors on the road. So how are we gonna deal with that?
Okay, I think we've heard all the angles on criterion 5. Thank you all very, very much. We didn't quite get to criterion 10 before we need to break. So we will have to,
Can I just add one small fact to confirm what she's saying that I think is important for the commission to understand? The provisions of the DRB permit only, it says trucks having more than 2 axles are prohibited from entering onto Cochran Road. And that back entrance, there's no other, and that's not even gonna be enforceable, but there has been some confusion among folks about whether it was restricted only to emergency vehicles, and it's not. It's fair game, so it's going to be, as she pointed out, you know, you can imagine Route 100 backs up, you know, that traffic's probably gonna go 50% one way, 50% another.
Peter.
I actually appreciate the clarification as to what's in the local permit. I just wanted to point out that to confirm, for the local decision, there is that condition about larger trucks, you know, larger than 2 axles, using this exit on the Cochran Road, and that is prohibited by the local permit. That was definitely a concession from the applicant's standpoint for an industrial use. You know, truck use is part of this land use, and so that was a significant concession already. But we recognize it as something that could be meaningful for the folks on Cochran. Part of that concession also is that Cochran Road entrance be necked down from what was a more ideal wider width to an 18-foot wide width, which we also feel will provide some traffic calming of that. You know, that's 2 9-foot lanes, and that's going to naturally sort of limit what kind of larger vehicles try to use there. So just wanted to point out that we don't disagree, I guess, on the facts maybe, but just the perspective is that it was already a significant concession from the project to get to where we are today with regard to the Cochran Road entrance.
Regarding criterion 10, Parker, I mean, fact of the matter is criterion 10 is a matter of you take the project that you heard about, compare it to the plan language, and you decide it. It's not really an evidentiary criterion, so I submit that the parties be given an opportunity along with whatever posterior filings there are to submit memoranda in light of the evidence to make their arguments, because really criterion 10 is more an argument about applying plan language to the project details that you heard about. I don't know that it's necessary to reconvene a formal evidentiary hearing.
I did note that, I mean, both sides have very extensively briefed out the issue, and it is largely a legal issue. You know, we didn't even think about that. We'll, at the very least, we need to reset this hearing, and we'll be issuing either a new hearing date to pick up with criterion 10 if we need to, or with additional directions for information and any other submittals that we might need. So leave it at that, and with that, we're recessed. Thank you, everybody.
The friend of the commission was told to wait until criterion 10 to share his,
Yeah, we're not at criterion 10, we're done.
Okay.
Right, I think so. Yeah.